LSU and Lane Kiffin, the tragedy of power that never pauses. Welcome to Anatomy of Tragedy, How Things Fall Apart. On December 29th, 2025, Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin signed a 7-year, $91 million contract to become head football coach at Louisiana State University. The problem was his Ole Miss Rebels had qualified for the college football playoffs, and Ole Miss was not pleased. With a heavy heart, the Rebels decided to move on from Kiffin, closing the door on any idea of him coaching the Rebels in the postseason. On his way to 55 wins in the program, Coach Kiffin built the program into its most successful run ever. But still, it ended with a colossal heartbreak felt across the country. But why were the 55 wins and the postseason positioning the pinnacle of Lane Kiffin's career at Ole Miss? Why did he not have the fortitude to finish what he started for a change? Why to move to the next stop already rather than fulfilling on the promises to his players? These are complicated questions with shattering forces within Coach Kiffin, as well as within the realities of the system and institutions we call college football. After watching this video, you will look beyond the 116 wins Coach Kiffin has amassed and beyond the endless millions he will earn in the coming years. You will also appreciate the system we live in 2026. Institutions, you see, don't experience doubt. They don't feel guilt. They don't wait for closure. They move. And when they move through people, what remains is rarely visible from the outside. This is not a story about betrayal. It's a story about capacity, about what happens when an institution becomes so powerful that timing itself bends around it. This is anatomy of tragedy. Not when something goes wrong, but when nothing ever slows down. Because modern tragedy does not announce itself with collapse. It announces itself with continuity. Louisiana State University does not operate in years. It operates in windows. And here they are: recruiting windows, coaching windows, television windows, playoff windows. In the modern SEC, relevance decays quickly. Momentum is not stored, it must be captured. LSU didn't need rebuilding, they needed re-acceleration. And in systems like this, patience is not a virtue. It really is a liability. Relevance at this scale is not emotional. It is, however, operational. It is measured in a couple of things: recruiting rankings, donor confidence, national narrative, and postseason positioning. And relevance is not cumulative. It does not carry forward simply because it existed yesterday. Elite institutions are conditioned to refresh relevance continuously, which creates a dangerous internal psychology. When dominance becomes normal, anything less than forward motion feels like decay. This is why LSU did not experience its momentum as good, but as unfinished. They experienced it as already late, not because results were bad, which they were, but because the system had learned to fear stillness. From LSU's perspective, Lane Kiffin was not a person. He was a solution vector. He solved offensive identity, recruiting credibility, the national narrative, as well as immediate competitiveness. Lane Kiffin had already absorbed the risk elsewhere. Ole Miss mattered because it did something invaluable for LSU. It reduced uncertainty that Kiffin, Ole Miss proved that Kiffin could stabilize a program, that his offense scaled in the SEC, that his volatility had matured into control. This is how power uses smaller systems, not maliciously, but instrumentally. Ole Miss didn't just build success, they performed risk reduction in LSU on LSU's behalf. By the time LSU moved, Coach Kiffin was no longer a gamble. He was a verified solution. This is not coldness. This is how institutions scale. LSU's history does not teach caution, it teaches replacement. When momentum stalls, LSU doesn't wait around, it intervenes. Coaches are not endings here at LSU, they are phases. This culture produces championships, but it also erases sentiment. The institution does not experience too soon. It does, however, experience still available. Because LSU does not anchor meaning in individuals, it anchors its meanings in continuity of dominance, which means timing is never sacred, only leverage is. This is where scale matters. Programs like Ole Miss cultivate belief, but programs like LSU absorb output. One develops and one consolidates. Ole Miss needed Kiffin to believe with them. LSU needed Kiffin to arrive already validated. That asymmetry defines everything. LSU can move mid-season because its gravity overrides decorum. When power is large enough, timing becomes optional. Not because rules disappear, but because consequences disperse outward. LSU did not see a rupture, it saw alignment. The emotional fallout occurred elsewhere. That's the asymmetry. LSU did not abandon anyone, they simply advanced. And institutions that advance rarely look backward. The pain happens somewhere else. The uncertainty happens somewhere else. The betrayal, the betrayal narrative happens somewhere else. This is the true privilege of scale. When an institution becomes so large, it no longer needs to metabolize harm. You know what it does? It exports it. And once a system learns that harm can be externalized, it stops factoring harm into decision making. Not because it's cruel, but because cruelty is unnecessary. Moves like this recalibrate the ecosystem. They teach coaches that loyalty is provisional, that leverage is temporal, that timing matters more than attachment. They teach programs that belief is valuable but only temporary, that continuity is optional, that replacement is always possible. And they teach fans something devastating, that emotional investment is asymmetrical. This isn't corruption, it's instruction. The system doesn't collapse, it educates itself. LSU did not commit betrayal, they demonstrated capacity. And when systems are rewarded for capacity, nothing ever stops them. This is the anatomy of tragedy. Not when institutions fail, but when they become too efficient to notice who they passed through. Tragedy used to be loud. Now it's merely procedural. This is anatomy of tragedy, how things fall apart. Please like and subscribe and join this growing community on YouTube.